So there's a lot of stuff going around right now about this Kilmar Garcia character, Maryland Man. I've got all the facts about that story today, so stick with me. I came with receipts. This gets kind of crazy. So, first of all, we're going to start with MSNBC prime time, where this ridiculously smug newscaster talks about uh, some Kilmar Garcia related stuff. So let's hear what she has to say.
Good evening. I'm Simone Sanders Townsend. Today, folks, the judiciary did what it was meant to do. Check a president who defied the rule of law, a sobering moment in our American democracy.
And you can just tell the way she moves her mouth when she's saying these things. She knows she's lying. There is so much to this story, and we'll get into it. But yeah.
District Judge James Boasberg said he found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt for violating his orders to turn around planes carrying deportees to El Salvador. The 46-page decision was unsparing, accusing the Trump administration of knowingly defying his very direct orders.
Which this case has now been through the Supreme Court, and 9-0, Trump won. Trump won. That these criminals, including this man, Garcia, was supposed to be sent to El Salvador.
To say that Boasberg has had enough is truly an understatement. This stands as a stunning escalation, but frankly, one that most likely will not move the administration into compliance, given that it has been openly defying court orders in a myriad of cases.
Not true. So basically, the facts are that this man, Garcia, is in fact an MS-13 gang member. And I have receipts, and I will show them to you momentarily. But let me just throw this down really quick. Basically, it is said that there was a clerical error or some kind of error where this man was picked up, deported wrongfully to El Salvador, and is being held unlawfully, and judges are trying to get Trump to bring him back. In fact, basically, somebody sent in a tip basically saying that he is an MS-13 member. He was picked up outside of an IKEA. He was then deported, and the only reason that this is being brought to court is because he was actually asking for asylum, okay, in 2019. He was denied. He was asking not to be deported for whatever reason. They said no. And then basically the judge at the time basically was reviewing his case and said, look, you look like you have ties to MS-13. We understand that by sending you back to your home country, because so he is in fact a citizen of El Salvador, and by sending you back to where you could be running into your previous gang members, you could be, killed or whatever. So they're like, if you are deported or when you are deported, we're basically going to show you mercy and not send you back to El Salvador, where you could get, hurt by these other people. So that's basically the clerical error that they're talking about. So they're pretty, pretty sneaky when they kind of fudge on the truth like this, and they talk about it like this is some poor Maryland man who didn't deserve to be deported, when all in actuality he was in fact a gang member, an illegal immigrant who did not need to be in this country in the first place, and who was sent back over to El Salvador, which was the only thing that was contested in actuality by any judge, basically, that he should have been deported to anywhere else in the world besides El Salvador.
Including the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. A Maryland federal judge had ordered his return, but the Trump administration has said no.
Of course
now,
not.
MS-13 is characterized as they should be, as an FTO, as a foreign terrorist organization. So he is not coming back to our country. President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story.
I didn't know you could tell a judge no. And also, I
Right, so basically, with that smug look on her face, I paused it at the perfect moment. In all actuality, so the judge basically said that, the president, because of this, you know, error where he was sent to El Salvador when the judge before had ruled that, he didn't need to go back to El Salvador, he could go anywhere else but El Salvador for his own safety. Um, Basically, the president has been ordered to facilitate, and the president has not said no, he will not facilitate. He has said he will facilitate in all ways that he can if the El Salvadorian president Bukele decides to release him, a known terrorist, back into the population, and he requests that Trump give him basically a ride or a lift to anywhere else in the world. President Trump has come out and said that he would do that, but at no time has anyone ever said that this man needed to come back or would come back to the United States. Uh, Bukele will not release him. He says in a moment in an interview what he thinks of the whole situation. Um, Trump never has said that he would release him back into the United States. Judge has never said that he needs to come back into the United States. The only ones yelling this are the leftists and this leftist judge. Um, this is just a crazy situation. So basically, um, so this is USA Today, and they're basically talking about, after the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration to facilitate, which they've already agreed to do that, the return, not the return of, basically facilitate that he get a ride somewhere else, like I said. Um, so that's very fudgy on the truth there. He was deported to El Salvador due to an administrative error, which was only that he was sent to El Salvador, not that he was deported. Um, let's see. How can and this is what Bukele had to say about it. How can I return him to the United States? I smuggle him into the United States? Of course I'm not going to do it. The question is preposterous. I don't have the power to return him to the United States. We're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. So he's basically, obviously, pretty obviously, he's not going to return him back to the United States, and he doesn't have any intention of even releasing him into El Salvador either. So this is the actual interview with President Bukele here of El Salvador and President Trump right here, of the United States. And this question was asked directly to um, President Bukele and President Trump. So we'll hear what they have to say.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question? Sure.
And let me just point out right here, so the way that they framed that question there was pretty dishonest. So the man that was mistakenly sent to El Salvador, acting like he was some innocent guy who was picked up off the street and deported, who shouldn't have been deported, when that is in fact known by everyone that is not that is not the truth. Okay, so all these reporters, they know the truth, and these things, these interviews and these questions, they're not picked up by the news media on the left, and so a lot of people are getting part truths or complete distruths. They're getting answers, and they're getting things like you just saw in that MSNBC interview where everything is being misconstrued. So it's obviously to further an agenda and a narrative that the leftists are trying to push. So he is being very open and very honest about what he's doing, and it is not fair that people are not able to see these full interviews. And it's just like another interview that was done the other day. Basically, there was a mother who came out in a press conference and talked about how a illegal immigrant had brutally murdered her daughter who had gone hiking on a trail, and she went through the details of how it happened. Um, it was a really sad story, but CNN had not picked it up after, this interview was released. And so you've got all these stories that just are not being told. So for all the people who are watching exclusively the left-wing media, they're missing out on a lot of truths, and they're not actually able to see the full story and come to their own conclusion. They're only allowed to see what they're being shown, and that's just not fair, honestly. So we're going to get the truth out there.
Sir, President, first and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
But Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point.
Right. Right. How can Americans come in? Right. This is literally a citizen of El Salvador who was sent back to El Salvador, and the president of El Salvador is sitting right there, and these news reporters have the audacity to say, are you going to return this citizen of yours, are you going to return to us even though he is a criminal and you have him detained? Like, who does that? Like, can I just go into any country and ask any president to release any prisoner to me? Like, why? Right?
Immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here.
Right.
That issue was raised with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for any help to get him back?
So, like, everything that he just said was completely disregarded by this interviewer. And I can guarantee you that if any of this is shown, only the parts where they're asking this question and the president is saying no is going to be shown. Like, the facts are going to be cut out. I don't know. It's just so slanted.
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no
And let me just put it out there, at no point during the Obama administration were any of the deportees at that time ever contested like this. Like, who goes against the president's order? Who goes against, like, and then gets involved now with a foreign leader and then disrespects the president like this in front of the foreign leader and disrespects the foreign leader by demanding that they return a criminal against the president and the foreign president's wishes. Like, this is just crazy and unprecedented by the leftist Democrats. Like, who does this?
No district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
Period.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is your,
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how,
seen
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like,
Duh.
I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I
The question is preposterous.
smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world to
Why
the safest country of the Western Hemisphere.
would he do
wants to
that?
go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world. Now,
So you're asking the president of El Salvador if he wants to release a prisoner that he placed in an El Salvadorian prison into the country. Why would he do that? Why would he want to do that if he put him in the prison? He thinks he belongs in the prison, right? It's pretty obvious. So let's look over here. And this is where you're going to see a lot of the receipts actually come up. So this has like basically step by step of who this man is, what has happened with him, what he's been accused of, what the facts are in the case, all this stuff. So let's listen into this.
Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. If you're joining us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are going to talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And here to talk about it with me is Chief Political Correspondent Byron. And Byron, why don't you give us a little précis of what this case is about? It's got some extraordinary aspects, but why don't you just run through what the case is?
Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an illegal immigrant from El Salvador, came to the United States illegally in roughly 2012, we think. Don't have a precise date or place for that. And the reason he's in the news at the moment is that he is among the people that the Trump administration deported to El Salvador and is in that pretty rough prison in El Salvador. But people on his side in Maryland, where he had been living and was picked up, say he doesn't deserve to have been deported. The Trump administration says he's a gang member. They say, no, he's not. He's just a father trying to have special needs kids, trying to make a living.
Yeah, and see, that's something that you hear a lot with all these leftists, right? That he's just a father and he just has, autistic kids, or, it's all emotional. All of it's emotional. But as you'll see in just a second, the facts are the facts.
And so this is an outrage, and a judge, a U.S. district judge in Maryland, has ordered the Trump administration to bring him back. And then failing that, they ordered him to facilitate his return. And so far, the Trump administration has said.
And this is all coming from that left-leaning judge. So the judge, no one else, just that judge, which has since been has been taken to the Supreme Court, and Trump won 9-0, as you just heard. So the left-leaning judge demanded that he be returned to the United States, but the Supreme Court and everybody else has already ruled that he is not to be returned to the United States. The president can facilitate if the El Salvadorian president releases him into El Salvador. We can facilitate giving him a ride somewhere else in the world, but at no time is he going to reside in the United States because he was illegal and never meant to be here.
No. And it's going to get to the Supreme Court. There's no doubt about it. And meanwhile, we're only now, after the Democrats are just in kind of a frenzy about this now, only now are we learning some of the actual facts about the case. And I think, this is my opinion here, I think they point toward the administration being correct that Garcia actually was a member of MS-13, which is the violent transnational gang in El Salvador.
Right. So even Garcia's lawyer concedes, and the facts are there, that the man is under a deportation order. What is at in dispute is whether or not he should have been removed. I think that the Trump administration admits that he should not have been removed in the way that he was. And as you say, it's likely to go to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has said that both that the administration must facilitate his return here, so that, but that the
they actually didn't.
Must also give due
You'll see in a second.
To the to the administration's right and duty under the Constitution to conduct foreign policy and national security policy. So it sounds as though it's going to come down to a sort of a semantic argument about what actually constitutes facilitating the return of somebody. And I presume that the Trump administration will say, we are facilitating it to the extent that if El Salvador wishes him to come back, he is an El Salvador citizen. If El Salvador wants him to come back, we will actually bring him back. Is that where it's going to come down to, do you think?
Well, it's a little, that was pretty complicated, but it's actually a little more complicated than that. When he was picked up in 2019, he was here illegally, just no doubt about that. And he was suspected of having gang affiliations. And one of the themes in his life is that he's often seen with people, and sometimes photographed people with people that he has no idea who they are. He was picked up outside a Home Depot in Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, in 2019, talking with 3 other guys, gang investors from the Prince George's County Police Department, questioned them all separately. When he was arrested in 2025, gang investigators from ICE showed him photographs of himself with other people, and he said, I just have no idea who that is. Yeah. Now, gang investigators show you pictures of yourself with known members of a gang, okay? But he just doesn't know.
Like, let me just say, like, if you had actually, here, hold on. There we go. If you had actually, been talking to these people and you didn't know that they were a part of the gang or whatever, you could have just said, like, oh, that's Fred and that's my buddy Alex, and we were just talking on the way to Home Depot and we got caught. But he's like, I don't know who these guys are. Like, yeah, you saw me talking to them, but I don't know who they were. That's not believable at all. He didn't even try to make something good up. Like, he just like, well, I don't know. I have no idea who they were. And that's, I mean, come on now.
Where he is. Now, what happened was in 2019, he realized he was in trouble because he was here in the United States illegally. So he wanted some sort of relief, some sort of protection that he could stay in the United States. He asked for asylum and he didn't get it. And then he asked for some sort of protection under the Convention Against Torture. He said he'd be tortured if he went back to El Salvador. He didn't get that either.
Right.
The judge said, no, actually, I think you're a gang member. This is the immigration judge. On the other hand, gang.
So even back then, the immigration judge in 2019 thought that he was a member of a gang.
members are killed all the time in El Salvador. And I think that if you went back to El Salvador, you might be killed. So what I'm going to do is give you something called WOR, withholding of removal, which was an order that said uh, Abrego Garcia can be deported anywhere except El Salvador. He cannot be returned to El Salvador.
So at no point was he not allowed to be deported, or was it a mistake that he was deported? The only mistake was that he was sent to El Salvador, but he is a citizen of El Salvador. And he is an MS-13 gang member.
That's all the order was. If the Trump administration had deported him anywhere else other than El Salvador, he'd have no case at all. But in fact, the immigration judge said no, he can't be deported to El Salvador.
So they basically just got him on a technicality. They got Trump on a technicality. And now, it's really dishonest that the media on the left is basically portraying this whole situation the way that they're portraying it, that Trump is some kind of, bad guy who is wrongfully deporting people and sending them places due to clerical errors and then not retrieving them against the judge's wishes, when all along the only error that was made was that there was a judge who ordered that this man not be sent to El Salvador because he was affiliated with a gang that could kill him if he was returned to El Salvador. So to show him mercy, he could be deported anywhere else in the world, but not El Salvador. Okay, so he was sent there. He was a citizen of El Salvador, and he was placed in El Salvador prison where he belonged. You know, so I think that this whole case has just been completely twisted. And what's really sad is there are so many people who unfortunately do watch CNN and MSNBC and all these other news outlets who purposefully withhold information and twist the facts to spread a dishonest agenda. So they know what they're doing, and it's not very forthcoming.
And that's where the Trump administration took him. So when he goes to the Supreme Court, there's this question, and I heard the way you described it. There is this facilitate issue, and there's been a lot of parsing and debate over the word facilitate. But there's also the bigger question of what to do with Garcia. Most news reports have said that the Supreme Court ordered him to be returned to the United States. Right. If you look at what the Supreme Court wrote, and I got it in front of me, he said that the Supreme Court said that the district judge had properly required the government to facilitate Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Not to bring him back, but to his release from custody. Clearly, it seems to me, and I have no role in this, but it seems to me the solution to this is to get Garcia out of this jail in El Salvador, take him to the U.S. Embassy, and then deport him from there to some other country. Never comes back to the United States.
Right.
That would fulfill the verdict of the immigration judge, and it seems to me to be entirely consistent with what the Supreme Court wanted. But the big fight is, and the media is demanding, and Democrats are demanding, that he be brought back to the United States. And I don't think the Trump administration is going to give in on that one. Might be wrong, but...
No. So he's not going to be released in El Salvador, as you just heard from Bukele, obviously and rightfully so, as an MS-13 member. And he is absolutely not going to be brought back to the U.S. So now I have one more thing to show you, which is the final nail in the coffin. So these are the pictures that Trump has published online, and they are the tattoos that are on this man's hand. Okay, so these letters and numbers are not the tattoo, they are superimposed to show you what these mean. And as a person myself who has worked as a corrections officer in a state prison, I will tell you right now that gang members have many, many, many tattoos, and sometimes they are just straight up MS-13 style, like it'll show exactly what they are. Other times they have symbolism that mean different things. So basically, these superimposed letters and numbers are to show anyone who is not familiar with these symbols what they stand for. So this is a marijuana leaf. It stands for M, right? So we have M. This is smile, S, MS. And then this cross here is a 1. And then for the 3, I can't really see what that is. Not quite sure, and it's blocked out here. But it has been determined that it stands for a 3. So this article, basically by MSN, says Donald Trump has been accused of sharing a fake image, and people are calling out that it's fake because of the superimposed MS-13s, which were never meant to actually be determined that those exact letters and numbers are tattooed on him. No, they were superimposed over the picture to show anyone looking at the pictures what these symbols actually depicted. So it says, so social media users pointed out that they were superimposed, duh, and they do not appear on any other photos, duh. So as you'll hear again, he's a Maryland father who came to the U.S. illegally, um, and by a 2019 court order was shielded from being deported. Actually, as we just heard, no, he was not. Only shielded from being sent to El Salvador. So, let's see. So, in a court case, the Trump administration claimed that he was wrongly deported to El Salvador, following which the court ruled. And see, it's really really basically it's very untruthful that they're using this wording and not explaining, because a lot of people are taking this whole situation out of context because of the way that this is being worded. That he was wrongfully deported to El Salvador, which is true in a small sense, like I just explained, but not that he was wrongfully deported. He was supposed to be deported. Um, so the White House has made it clear that the person is not coming back. As defense, the Trump administration said, firstly, the ball is in El Salvador's court, as they will have to decide whether they would release the prisoner, which El Salvador President Bukele denied. Secondly, the Trump administration released several pieces of evidence to establish that Garcia is an MS-13 member and a criminal. So MS-13 is not part of the tattoo, obviously, and it's basically just shared to denote the meaning of the tattoo. Um, the tattoos are actually 4 symbols which stand for MS1 and 3. So this is a quote by Trump. This is the hand of the man that the Democrats feel should be brought back to the United States because he is such a fine and innocent person, in quotes. They said he is not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, and 2 highly respected courts found that he was a member of MS-13 and beat up his wife, etc. I was elected to take bad people out of the United States, among other things. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. So I think it's very obvious that it was a correct decision that this man, Garcia, was deported. I think that he rightfully was deported, and I actually think it's fine that he was deported back to El Salvador. I think he belongs in the El Salvadorian prison, and I think that showing that he has been in photographs speaking with known MS-13 gang members shows that he still is in contact with some of the gang. He has not completely fled the gang as it has been said. And so basically, if you make your bed, you lie in it. And not a very good guy. Um, Done some bad stuff and is where I believe he belongs. So, what do you think? Do you agree with this story? Um, is this the first time you're hearing all of this? Uh, did you have another assumption about all of this, or do you still believe something else about all this? Do you have proof to the contrary? Drop it down below. Let's have a respectful debate with each other. And if you have watched this video to the end, please consider giving this channel a like and a subscribe. It really helps out the channel and what I'm doing here, which is trying to spread the truth and give you the facts. So that's all I got for today, everybody. Bye!